Hi, everyone. Kristen here, and thank you for being with me for another episode of The Wild Within. So, before we dive into the show for today, I have a few questions that I would simply like to invite you to contemplate and allow into your system to set the space and set the stage for our conversation today. So, perhaps you'd like to close your eyes, just take a few breaths and allow these questions to bring you into a state of self inquiry for the next minute or so. And so, as you connect to your inner world, your innermost space, how did you move your body today? Did you move in new ways? How did you play? How did you allow your inner child to explore their joy, their passion, their desires? How did you use your voice today? How did you express yourself? How did you express your emotions? Did you have a chance to connect with the earth today? Have you placed your bare feet on the ground? When have you last given gratitude for your life, for all that you have? When did you last sit in stillness, allowing space to fill you, give your inner voice room to speak? And what have you been creating with your life force? What visions do you hold? What have you been manifesting, moving towards? And what actions have you been taking in alignment with your desires and your visions? Maybe take a breath. Just simply noticing what comes up. And I know I said those questions kind of fast, so you can feel free as well to press pause, come back, reflect on some of these questions. And we're going to get into our topic for today, which is one that I personally have always been so passionate about, and particularly in this phase of my life and journey, the ways that I've been expanding, and also in the ways I've been supporting my clients and groups in their own expansion and expression, because I feel we're really in a time where it is more important than ever to be accessing our true path in life, right? Like so many people, so many of us are waking up to see that they are on a path that is not right for them, and that it is no longer possible to keep pushing and grinding in this way when there is not actual alignment with our own life force and what comes naturally to us and what we're actually here to bring to the world. So for our topic today, I would love to dive into creative expression and what I call creative recovery. So really recovering the part of us that is meant to create, that is here to bring something unique to the world, be that our unique energy, our expression, our soul, whatever it is that we're here to do, whatever it is that we love. This is our creativity. And I want to discuss ways that we can remove our blocks to our creative selves, to our creative potential. In this new context, in this new season of the podcast, I know that creativity is a topic I have undoubtedly covered before. But I want to reapproach it from a new light with some new thoughts and perspectives. So, big breath. First, I'd like to invite you to once again contemplate, what does creativity mean to you? When you imagine this concept of creativity, or creativity applied to you particularly, what comes up? For many of us, there's ideas that we have around being a creative person or creating in our lives and certain things we think that needs to look like, right? So, for example, this idea that being a creative person means we are an artist in some way, or there is a certain type of person who is creatively expressed. But then there's those of us who are just living more practical lives, living with our feet on the ground. We don't have time for all of this creative whatnot. In actuality, I want you to just simply notice the beliefs that come up when you think of creativity in the context of your own life. Also, notice what positive or expansive beliefs come up. You know, where in your life do you see yourself creating? And that doesn't have to look like writing a book or being a musician or painting. It can look like the type of space that you're creating in your home, the types of relationships that you're cultivating, the type of lifestyle that you're developing, the routines that you have. It can look like different forms of self-expression that may pop through in different times of your life. It can look like so many things, and it truly is, because at our core, we are creators. There are so many stories and beliefs that can get in the way of us recognizing our potential as creative beings. And this idea of creative recovery has also come to me through, and I'm sure many of you have heard of this book, The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. It's a book that came to me earlier in my life, and I felt a lot of affinity towards it to work through this process. But I dived in a little bit, but never really went through the full process. And this year, while living here in the Sacred Valley of Peru, I had the opportunity to join a book study group and to dive deeper into the Artist's Way process, and ultimately to begin co-creating art therapy classes with a dear sister of mine here, Catherine. And our classes have continued working with art therapy and psychedelic integration. So, Kat, if you're out there, shout out. Thank you for bringing me back to the Artist's Way. And yeah, the process that's mapped out in the book is incredibly beautiful. It's both simple and complex. There are a lot of different practices. And I'm not creating this podcast episode based on like an outline from that book. It's really my own experiences with my own creative recovery. But I bring in the Artist's Way because there are several prominent concepts which I think are important to recognize and to weave into our own process as we start to reconnect to our creativity. So yeah, I mean, just to give a little bit of context, you know, I have always personally identified as a creative person. From a very young age, I was out writing stories and poems, riding my bike around the block, like while all the other kids were out playing, I don't know, football, soccer, capture the flag. Like I would do that sometimes, but often I would just ride in circles around my cul-de-sac, writing stories in my head and then go run down and write them on paper. I loved painting. I loved building. I was all about like these manual, creating things with my hands and creating stories to bring to life, you know, what I was imagining in my mind. And so this was really my first identity, was as a creative person. I found that moving through life, you know, there's so many beliefs and distractions that can get in the way, you know, as we move through school and we're really focused on academics and art class, and creative projects kind of have their time, their segmented, compartmentalized moment, right? But then we're bombarded with so many other things that we need to be doing. And I think we learn from a very young age, like there is this sense of overwhelm that's put on us where it's immediately by the time you're 12 years old, you know, you have 7 different classes with homework from math and language arts and history and speech and this and that. And right. So then our natural inclinations kind of become segmented to that little bit of time that we might have on the weekends. Does that sound familiar? For many adults, that is the reality as well, right? Moving through obligations and lists of things to do and getting through work and making money to live in the world, while maybe segmenting a tiny bit of our creative energy for the weekend or a vacation. But a lot of that time is also just given to rest and recover, right? So where is the space for our creativity? You know, so not to start from a pessimistic outlook, but from my experience, at least growing up in the United States and in the Western world, that's been, a big formative aspect of my own relationship with my creativity. And as I move through life, studying psychology, exploring different career paths from, okay, for example, for a while in my freelance career, I was writing and I was doing work in, working for a small publishing house, doing some ghostwriting and editing work. So I was using my creative skills, but it wasn't in the way that my soul wanted. It was in a way, it was to basically work for other people. And so that part of me got squashed, right? Like I started to, I hate to even say this, but I started to sort of resent, that ritual of sitting down to write and be at the computer and go through a piece of writing, because it wasn't my own, it wasn't my soul's calling. But I had fallen into the trap of, doing these things for money rather than believing in myself and my creative gifts that those could support me. So as the years went on, I've gotten much more into coaching work and guiding work and facilitation and supporting others in uncovering their gifts. And at the same time, I still, at my core, identify mostly as a creative. And I know that's for a reason, because that is who I am. That is a huge aspect of who I am. And that is why reviving this podcast has been so important to me, and starting to write more and share my art and my music, my writing. And I'm just sharing this because I believe that it probably resonates with others out there, and that we live in a world which can be so full of distraction. There can be a lot of overwhelm, particularly these days, as things are just more complicated and crazy in the world. And there isn't necessarily always all this time to just relax and explore a creative process. But we're going to discuss today how to carve out, not just carve out that time, but how to really access that part of yourself to see that you are that creative, that the way that life is moving through you is the expression of your creativity, and how to kind of shift your identity around that rather than compartmentalizing your life, to live with a wholeness and integration where that creativity and that life force is just what moves through you and creates the energy and flow for everything else in your life to flourish. So, part of creative recovery is rewriting the stories and kind of the addictions that we've been carrying that hold us back, right? So when you think of recovery, and when you think of the word recovery, we're often thinking of recovery from what? Like recovery from an addiction, recovery from an ailment. And I don't want to put this, again, negative filter over it, but if we think of what kind of addiction we might be recovering from when we're recovering our creative selves, there's many that might arise, right? An addiction to distraction, addiction to consumption, addiction to stories that we're not enough, that we aren't creative, addicted to stories that we don't have time, that we need to be practical, we need to be, focusing on whatever makes us money rather than what we actually enjoy. I think a few of these are quite prominent, right? For example, the distraction and the consumption. It is so easy to get sucked into consuming over creating, right? With all these little devices that we have, cell phones, social media, that are built in with the way the developers design them to stimulate your brain in certain ways that literally becomes an addiction. We're not just talking a metaphor of an addiction here. We're talking a literal addiction to dopamine and serotonin that you get every time you get a new notification that there's a new post, or someone else has made a reel with the little rainbow circle around it. We want to click it. It's addiction. It's addiction to consumption. We're filling our brain with other people's stuff that crowds up all of the space where our own stories, our own perspectives, our own creations want to move through. So if you are committed to the path of creative recovery, you're really committing to reclaiming your own essence, to cleaning your energy field from everything that's coming in all the time at us. And it's really difficult, if not impossible, to limit that completely, right? Unless we're going to go off and live in a mountain, which I can tell you I've done. I live in Andes in a tiny village in the Sacred Valley of Peru, and I'm still bombarded by information all the time because I work online and I have fiber optic Wi-Fi, and like I have a device just like all of us, you know? So unless you're really, really off the grid, we have to develop boundaries. We have to develop structures to support our reconnection to our true essence and to our creative selves. So, okay, I have a lot of different points to get through here, and please stick with me. I'm recording this in one go because it's also going to be a video, and I'm wanting to practice just this flow of letting things fly, letting things be imperfect, and allowing the process to evolve. So in a way, the process of this podcast reviving and me expressing myself more is a meta example of what I'm teaching, right? Like allowing things to be imperfect, looking back and seeing, okay, I can publish this. Perhaps it's a little bit rambly. Maybe in 10, 20, 30, 40 episodes from now, things will be super structured and it'll be different. But I'll look back and say, okay, you know what? At least I pressed publish. At least we put it out there. And if this can speak to anyone and help you, inspire you in any way, then my work is complete. So let me just touch on these points that I find are important around reclaiming our creative essence. The first is, this idea of inspiration. So we often think, okay, well, in order to really sit down and write or to paint or to write a song, I have to wait for this inspiration to hit me. I think that we put so much pressure on inspiration, and it comes sometimes, and it's an incredible experience. We all know that feeling of you get the download, it comes through. This is what I'm going to do. This is the vision of what I'm going to paint or what I'm going to write. It's an amazing feeling. However, if we're always waiting for that moment, we're not going to have any consistency with our expression, with our output. So I would recommend, rather than waiting for inspiration to strike, to actually sit down and decide, this is going to be a habit. I'm actually going to create a structure. And I'll talk about this in a moment, that this is going to be a habit. I'm going to sit down and do something for this period of time, even if it's ugly, even if it's messy. Which leads me to point number 2. Creativity is not about putting out something good or something beautiful or something worthy of public eye. Creativity is a process. It's actually about how you feel and what moves and changes within you as you take what's inside and put it outside. This can look so many different ways. This can look like moving your body. This can look like using your voice, making weird sounds, splashing paint on paper. This can look like making a collage. This can look like arranging your house in a new way, or creating a garden space, or, even like rearranging your schedule in a way that feels better for you. That can be creative. Having new pathways that you take, like walking in nature, exploring new places, developing new routines, developing new rhythms that support a new evolution of yourself. Allowing creativity to be messy, so to speak, and allowing it to not be judged based on what the output looks like at the end. And creativity and creative recovery begins with a lot of stillness. It begins with actually a process of clearing. And if you think about like growing a garden, I really like this metaphor. Our creative essence, it's like growing a garden. There's a whole process, and we as well, we move in seasons. Our beings, our inner rhythms as humans, as beings which are alive on this earth, we are connected to the seasons in the same way that the plants are. We have our inner rhythms. We are not meant to be in output mode and go mode forever. That would be unsustainable, and it is unsustainable. And anyone who has attempted that sort of constant productivity has inevitably reached a place of burnout. So we're forced into that hibernation period no matter what we do. But when we're growing a garden, we wouldn't try to grow a new, vibrant, thriving garden on top of a bunch of weeds or on top of a bunch of old, dry soil, right? Like what would we do? We would clear out the garden. We would make sure everything's out, all the weeds. We would put in fresh soil. We would put in nice manure or something nice, rich, mineral rich soil for the seeds to plant. So that is the same with our creative world, before, as we're in the process of coming back to our creative selves, we want to create that space, stillness in your day, clearing out any old habits that need to go, being honest with yourself. How many hours a day are we spending looking at this, and really being honest with yourself. Like, put a screen timer on your phone so you can actually see. That will change it for you. How many hours you're spending on your phone, for example, or other habits that may not be serving you. Are there other addictions in your life that are holding you back from what is your true potential? Where are you distracting yourself? Where are you kind of moving from thing to thing, constantly back and forth, when actually being in stillness would serve the creative expression that wants to come through? So building in more time for nothingness. Meditation is great. Breath work is great. Doing yoga, having rituals and routines, but actually also just having space to do nothing, which I know for myself is very difficult to imagine as someone who is very much a doer. But the space for nothingness is what creates that fertile garden, that fertile soil. And then we start to plant the seeds. And then we can start to try a few different practices, a few rituals. Embodiment is huge. Learning to move your body in new ways. Stomping your feet on the ground. Just those things I shared in the beginning. Where are you playing? How do you want to play, right? Like, what are the things that actually, if you connect to your inner child, that he or she wants to do? Like, what are the things that you actually love? And if that's a difficult question to answer, that means it's a really important question to answer. Because if you've become separated from what it is that you love, it's going to be difficult for that creativity, for your life force to move through you. And keep in mind that when I say our creativity, it is synonymous with our life force energy, with our excitement, with our inspiration, with our unique vibration. I mean, not to sound all woo-woo and all these words, but our life as it moves through us, when we are fully alive and vibrant and thriving, we are creating. We're naturally drawn to bring something to the world. I don't know if you've heard this, but it's like, even those who, let's say, build and sell a business really early, young in life, are able to retire at a young age. Like, many of these people who retire don't actually want to retire. They actually just go and start a new business, or they start a new project, So many people, in their 60s, etc., actually don't want to retire if they enjoy what they do for work, because we're meant to create. We're meant to do something, to be in service, to be connected with others, to be connected with the planet, and to be an intrinsic part of this network of life. We're not meant to just sit on a beach drinking pina coladas all day, doing nothing, right? Sometimes we need that for rest, or whatever rest looks like for you, but we are creative beings. So when I'm saying this word creativity over and over, I'm really talking about aliveness. It's synonymous with aliveness. The next thing I want to share about is also around this metaphor of the garden. When we're growing our garden, so we have our soil. It's nice and rich. Maybe we've planted the seeds. So in planting the seeds, you've started to sit down like every day with your journal. You've started to sit down with your notebook. You start to sit down with your musical instrument, or move your body and whatever else. And side note, bringing back the artist's way, the morning pages, right? Like, take some time each day. I try to do it in the morning. It's best. But even if it's another time in the day, and free write. Stream of consciousness, automatic writing for 3 pages, whatever size journal you have. That is such a powerful process for allowing your mind to just dump out the thoughts, the thinky thoughts and get those out of your head onto paper. There's such a freedom that comes when we get those thoughts out, and it allows you to access a deeper layer of what's there, what you're feeling, what you're wanting to create, maybe your vision. A lot of times, like, emotions can come out, or you see a different perspective on what's going on for you in your life when you're doing the automatic writing. So I'll put that in the show notes as well. the structure for our garden. So we're planting our seeds, we're doing our practices, we're doing our morning pages, we're maybe sitting down, listening to music that you love, right? Like surround yourself with creativity as well. Even if you don't feel ready yet to start your own creative practice, create an environment that supports creativity. Fill your home with beauty, music, evoke the senses so that what you see, what you hear, what you smell, what you taste, create beautiful food for yourself to eat. Creativity, right? Creativity in your relationships. How can you surprise someone that you love or create a new experience for you to do together? So you're planting our seeds, and then keep in mind that our garden needs a structure. It needs some walls, right? Because if we're trying to just build our garden and it just spreads and spreads and spreads across the whole world, we're not likely to build a very thriving garden. Actually, the fence and at least the boundaries where we know the boundary is for that garden helps it to thrive. We're like, okay, cool. This is what I'm planting. This is what's going here, 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 here. So it's the same for our life, right? Like we need the structures to contain all of the feminine energy. So thinking of this in terms of a healthy masculine and feminine, right? And when I say masculine and feminine, those are just kind of two words to represent like the structure and the container, and then that which is growing in the container, all of the energy and the flowingness and the magical spark of life that grows inside the plant. That is the great mystery. Right? Like, how does it work? How is that spark of life just growing? Like, that is the mystery. That is the feminine. That is the creative life force. But we need the bounds in order to contain it. Similarly, like your spirit, your soul, it's in your body. Well, we think it's in your body. But we have that context for all intents and purposes being human right now. We have a body, and then our spirit and our soul can move and breathe and express. And we have this idea that I'm Kristen and you are you, and you're over there and you're over there. And that's the structure, right? Because if I'm reconnected to my true essence, which I believe is everything, then it's just a different experience, right? Like we're having a human experience right now. So we have the structure of the human body and the human container. So similarly with our life, right? To develop a creative practice, create structures for yourself, right? And it helps you to be more thriving and more alive and more playful in everything that you do, right? If you have your structure for work, then you work and then you get your work done and you feel really accomplished and you feel really happy about that. Even if what you do for work isn't your passion, it's okay because you have a structure around it. You have a boundary. And then when you're done, you might have a space for your family and just for being with them and for being really present. And when you're with your family, you're not thinking, ooh, I need to be doing my creative practice or I need to be doing my work, right? Because it's a different structure. And then you might have a structure around your creative time. A really good example for this is a morning ritual, like having a morning routine where you move your body, where you breathe, where you maybe listen to some good music. Your morning routine can change as well. Like mine recently is involving dance, and that's new. I haven't been a dancer in my life. I mean, I would still not call myself a dancer, but I move my body in crazy ways to silly music in the morning, and it feels really good. Also part of my morning routine right now is playing my guitar and doing some yoga and doing some journaling, right? So it can change as you go. Sometimes it's maybe really meditation. Sometimes it's really still, needing that stillness so that your voice, your inner voice can come through. And sometimes you might be in a phase where you just need to express and make sound and play instruments and move your body or go for a walk. So all of this is like tending the garden, right? And what is the water that you're adding to your garden? What is the food that you're feeding the plants? How are you helping and guiding these beautiful plants, your beautiful garden of your life force to grow? And again, like some of that water can be inspiring yourself. Like, what are you listening to? What are you consuming? What can you replace? What sort of dead end consumption can you replace with art, with literature, with music, with new ideas? Which relationships in your life are nurturing you and which relationships are kind of making you feel stuck or even holding you back? Which is another side note, because it's important as we start to thrive as creative beings to make sure we have the space in our life to keep growing. And sometimes we hold on to relationships where people see us in a certain way. They hold an identity around us. And it's very, very important, this idea of identity. Like, as we identify, whatever we identify with, that's basically what we embody in the world, right? Like, if I identify as a creative person, I am a creative person. No one can argue that, right? So your identity is so important, but also we tend to take on the identities that others project onto us, right? So if you're, let's say, like the youngest sibling in your family, and your whole family kind of sees you as the baby of the family, and whatever qualities come along with that, perhaps growing up, like, yeah, you were seen as the baby, and maybe the baby in the family is like needing more attention, or they see you as this or that, or they see you as needy, or they see you as XYZ, never keeping up with your older brothers and sisters who are super successful. Maybe the youngest sibling feels like they have this identity of always coming last. Like, these are things that you might have to shed later in life. And so it's so important to, cultivate your environment and your relationships in a way that you can rise into the identity that you want to be embodying. It doesn't mean you have to get rid of the people in your life, like family, that might see you in an old way, but just to really start to like express to them, okay, this is what I'm embodying. I'd like to show up in this way, or I'd like you to treat me in this way, or et cetera, or at least surrounding yourself with other people that create for you that space to grow into a new identity. Side note, I think this is why travel can be such a transformational process. As part of the transformational aspect of travel is you really have this opportunity to redefine yourself, coming into a new space, a completely new culture, a completely new community, perhaps, where no one knows you in your old ways. It just gives you that space to explore what is true for you, what comes naturally for you, who are you beyond the constraints and the limitations of your past. Because truly, we are only constrained by our past to the degree that we believe in the illusion of it. I would recommend as well Joe Dispenza, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. I'll put that in the show notes as well, on a similar theme. So just a few more points I want to make, and I'll wrap this up. Move your body, right? Like, moving our body helps us access our creative energy big time. Move your body in new ways. Make new shapes. Shake your body. Tap your body. Release your meridians, release energy points, release areas where you might have stuck, trapped energy. So tapping is great. Moving, shaking, dancing, jumping. Make weird sounds. Try making weird sounds with your voice. Go high, go low. I will say doing vocal activation practices has been incredibly transformational for myself, my own creative journey. Again, it's things that aren't necessarily related to what you're creating, but they just help to open the channels. They help to open where you might have been stuck. And creativity is about feeling. And so your emotional process, doing your healing work, connecting to what aspects of you, your past, your inner child need to be felt, need to be loved, need to be reparented, is also very supportive for your creative recovery. So just remember, our creativity, in terms of our chakras, our creativity lives like in the second chakra area. So our sacral area, which is connected to our emotions. It's the element of water. It's connected to our inner child. And for women, it's connected to our womb, right? Like our physical center of creation. Second chakra is all about passion and play and feeling and just being in the flow of life and allowing life to move through you, right? It's when we get up to the third chakra that we're dealing more with purpose and direction and focus, making a difference in the world, commitments. That's also important because we need that structure. So I feel like these two areas work together. We have the structures, and within that, we can explore our passions, our desires, our flows, our inner child. But remember to feel, remember to create space to process your feelings, to express your anger, have a coach, have a mentor, have a therapist, work with different energy tools, work with sound, work with breath, work with music. When triggers come in, find ways to process them rather than press them down. Because if we're repressing our emotions and we're stuffing them in, it's very difficult to be creative. I mean, look at the art and the music and the writing in the world that is inspired by deep feelings of grief or heartbreak or joy or love, or right, like the link between creativity and emotion is, it's the same, right? Like they're the one and the same as well. So just another thing to keep in mind. I don't know if I have a lot more to say about all of this. I just want to leave you, I want you to see your journey of accessing your creative self in two ways. This is the last thing I'll say. I believe that so much of life is the ultimate paradox, right? Like in order to truly understand the essence of this reality, we have to learn to hold completely seemingly contradictory thoughts together, both as true. I don't know if that makes any sense, but there's also books that talk about this as well. But I've also just sort of realized this from my own life experience. So for example, here, when it comes to our creative recovery process, know that first, it's already there. There is nothing to change. You can immediately access your creative self. There is no gap between you and that, right? And you are on a journey of crossing the chasm, of closing the gap between where you are and where you want to be, right? Where you are now and how is your creative self fully expressing themselves in the world, your fully alive, expressive, transformed self, right? So we're talking about there is no gap. And your journey is to cross the gap. You guys might think I'm crazy. Also use whatever works for you, whichever metaphor, whichever perspective feels the most resonant for you. We're really taking the journey from the head to the heart here. It's the longest journey you'll ever take in your life, the most important journey. I don't want to say the longest, but it's the most important journey. We can travel the world multiple times, and I've done it many times. I don't know how many times around the world, but the most profound journey is the one from here to here, like the head to your heart and the head to your body, to living in your body and your soul, being here. And that is where your creativity rises from, ripens from, moves through you. Like when you can feel fully every aspect of your life, when you can sit and look out at this mountain and let tears of gratitude stream down your face, just feel the sun on your face, the miracle that this incredible fireball that would totally kill us if we were any closer to it is just the right distance away to warm us to such a comforting degree right now. Not going to get into global warming, but another thing just to be grateful for, that we can enjoy, and we are being given life by the elements in this way. So all of it is related to our creativity, our ability to embrace life, to absorb life, to feel gratitude, to offer our prayers. And there's so much more I can get into, but with our connection to the wild and to nature, and truly the wild within and without, to recognize there is no difference between us and nature, to see the creativity of nature, the constant regeneration, the old dying and becoming the soil for the new. It's the same in your life. As you prune away what is no longer needed, what is no longer serving you, that actually becomes the fertilizer for your new self, for your new creations, your new expressions. So stay connected to your dreams, stay connected to your visions, and most importantly, stay connected to what is present inside of you right now. It's another point that became very clear for me as I started to start this podcast again, is that the next episode is whatever's alive for me right now. That's what needs to be published next. It's not about mapping out the next 25 episodes of these are the topics I want to talk about. Maybe there will be some that come up, but it's really whatever's alive now. This wants to move through me. And this came through right after my last one. I was like, okay, this topic is so alive. So staying connected to your presence, to what's here now, is a wonderful way to access your creativity. So I hope this wasn't too long. Leaving you all with, just stay connected to that spark in your heart and stay connected to some of these questions that we've posed today. and get out there and create something today. Whatever it might be, know that it's perfect. Know that it's an expression of you, and that you're here to leave your legacy on earth through the way your energy touches others. Yeah. So, yeah. Thank you for being here. Sending you all so much love, and I look forward to sharing more together soon.